our party is getting close to the end of the campaign and headed into the Heart of Despair, and we're going to talk about how we prep for it. So let's dig in. So, as we get into a new chapter, you guys have heard this probably a few times by now, but I like to reread the chapter and make sure I don't miss any of the details. I also go through and do an outline of the chapter. So we're going to go find that under Resources, our campaign outline, and then under our quick glances, we're going to go to Chapter 7, and this one's pretty straightforward. Chapter 7, Heart of Despair. Got a little link here to the location that I've saved in our database. We'll go to that in a second. But changes from the book. I don't think I'm going to have Alyxian ask if it's okay for him to leave. From the book, he needs permission from the party immediately to see if they can leave. And I feel like this, 9 times out of 10, leads to the party saying yes, regardless of what you've done as far as roleplay, and you end up with the bad ending. So I'm going to change this a little bit. I feel like you get the bad ending unless you really lean into the roleplay of Alyxian and how he's a little bit twisted, his mind's a little bit warped and whatnot, and your party goes into this feeling a little bit uneasy. And that can also be determined by how much of the Netherdeep they have explored. Rather than take any chances, I'm going to have the fights happen. As we play through the fights, I may give them opportunities later in the encounter to determine if they want to let him go or not. So that's something I'm going to change. I've seen in the subreddit quite a bit where people have said, hey, my party just said, yep, see you later, and they've let him out and had the bad ending. So I'm trying to avoid that with my party. A little railroady, maybe, but I feel like in the long run, it gives my players a better opportunity and chance to make a decision. As we go through the encounter with Alyxian, I'm going to lean into that roleplay I talked about earlier pretty heavily as far as what he is like during the different states. So Alyxian the Tormented versus Alyxian the Callous versus Alyxian the Dispossessed, so that they get a feel for who Alyxian is right now and what his state of mind is, and so that they can make a more informed decision rather than just like, yeah, sure, we want to be good, sounds great, see you later, have fun, go destroy Ank'Harel. We're going to change that. Goals and quests, pretty simple here. You either save Alyxian or defeat Alyxian, and that is pretty much it in the Heart of Despair. NPCs is just Alyxian. There's no secrets and clues, there's no magic items or anything like that, and there are no transitions. This is the end. One thing I will say is I have prepped my party for the end of the campaign, just saying, hey, once this is over, let's talk about your ride into the sunset. Think about what your character is going to be doing after this is done. I guess that's kind of a transition we've talked about. So let's jump into the Heart of Despair, and there's a hyperlink here, or if you want, you can go back to our main page here, and link for this Notion notebook will be in the description below. You can go to locations, and then scroll down, I think it's load more, then you get the Heart of Despair. So you can see our location here. I'm using Cat Valkyrie's maps. I'll provide a link for these in the description below as well. Here is the Heart of Despair in kind of its more peaceful form. And then here it is Angered, which will be most of the battle. Here's the one from the book with the locations. I've gone through as I read through this chapter and made some notes. So the features, I've got how wide, how tall, what the water is like, and then the locations I've labeled as well, just what they are, because they come into play during the battle. In the encounter, I wanted to make sure I had a really good understanding of how it plays out, because you've got layer actions, you've got 3 different phases of Alyxian, and they all come with different actions, bonus actions, legendary actions, resistances, all those different things. So I really want to make sure that I understand this. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I have a hard enough time with just a regular encounter, especially if there's different types of monsters. So I really wanted to make sure I understood this. So another little trick with this, a player can choose as an action to kind of appeal to Alyxian and make a persuasion check to impact the battle, which I think it does 20 damage to the various form of Alyxian, as well as kind of sway them in one way, shape, or form. Well, as you're going throughout the Netherdeep, there are places in the book where it mentions you can placate the Apotheon's regret. If you do so, this is where it comes into play in the final battle. So every time you do that, you get an opportunity to use advantage on that persuasion check. So let's say you placate the Apotheon's regret 5 times in the Netherdeep. 5 times during this battle, you can use advantage on your persuasion check, which I think is pretty useful, and we'll go through that, and I'll make sure to let my players know that that's the case. Layer actions. So these all happen on initiative count 20, and if someone else, like a player, gets 20, then it happens after them. But there are, for each of the different areas here in the Heart of Despair, there's a different layer action that can take place, and you can kind of switch between and choose the two. The only stipulation is you can't use the same one twice in a row. So I've got what they do, how they impact the players here, and then I've also got a note on what the players can do to stop the layer action. So they can pray to one of the 3 prime deities and roll to see if they have an impact on the fight, and if so, then this layer action is no longer viable to Alyxian. We'll want to make sure to note that on our encounter tracker and make sure that we're using those, and I've got a good understanding of what they are. Stage 1. So now we go into the actual battle with Alyxian. This is going to get a little tricky, so I have gone through and made some detailed notes about what is going on. I've made sure to note when it ends, and this one is pretty simple. The tormented version is reduced to 0 HP. And then I've got stat blocks for the fight. So I've got legendary resistances. I've got a place to track that. Each form has 2. I've got actions for each form, what actions to use and who to focus them on. Same with legendary actions, which ones to prioritize and on whom. And then I've got a stat block here that I can look at so that I don't have to pull up in the book or whatever else I need to do. I've got it all in one place. I've also got the emotional state of Alyxian in this form, including some example dialogue that Alyxian will use in the battle so that I can make sure my players understand where Alyxian is and what his headspace is like. And then also the effects of any comforting that my players do. So there's stage 1. Stage 2 is Alyxian the Callous, which he thinks is just perfect version of himself and doesn't understand why all these things are happening. So we've got resistances, actions, legendary actions, and then we've got the emotional state here as well. And then the last stage is Alyxian the Dispossessed, which has a really cool feature. The Stoneheart Dagger I think is cool. You can petrify someone as long as the dagger is still in that someone, so someone can pull it out and whatever else. I think that's a really cool feature. And then again, emotional state, dialogue, and then comforting. So I've got this pretty well prepared. I'm going into this really prepared. I don't know that my party will get into it next session, but if they do, at least the start of it, I've got this all ready and geared up to go. All of that being said, let's dive into our actual session notes. We start with our characters. We've got chosen our Bugbear Barbarian, and our player is the one that's moving, which is why we've been moving along at such a good clip, and why my crafting videos have taken a plummet, because I'm busy prepping every single week. We're playing every week now, instead of every other week. So chosen our Bugbear Barbarian. We've got Dimitri, our Gnome Fighter, Iris, our Halfling Warlock. We've got Jimmy, our Sea Elf Druid, and Trixie, our Human Artificer / Wizard. I've also added or rearranged this so that it's a little bit more useful. With the level up, I've added the HP, their AC, and I've also included notes for their ruidium exposure. And everybody's got a little rash right now. Our strong start, our Iris had just cast a spell on one of the sharks in area N16, and all at once a miniature Ruidus had dozens of eyes open and stare at them. There's a secret room that opened up to their left, and Trixie was cursed. And we're gonna have them roll initiative and take from there, and we'll see what my party does. Scenes. We have the Netherdeep. Here's a link to that location. It has the same information as the Heart of Despair, and we've got reminders about the Ruidium corruption. One thing I'm changing is in area N26. Last session in area N12, I think it was, I added a petrified Dermot, just to switch things up a little bit. My party is very, very friendly with the rivals, so in area N26, I'm going to have my party basically meet up. So those who have fragments with them already are able to enter into the Heart of Despair, but those who don't are not able to. As they turn around, the rival party is going to show up looking for Dermot. They will have a spell scroll of greater restoration, so that they can cure the petrification, because unfortunately for them, their cleric was the one that got petrified. They're all going to be showing huge signs of Ruidium corruption because they've been using them pretty extensively here in the Netherdeep and a little bit beforehand, and I'm really just planning on improvising this. I've kind of got the motivation for the rivals at this point. We call them the Crimson Company in my game, so they're really hesitant to want to close the rift because they have really enjoyed the use of Ruidium. They feel like it can do a lot of good, but because my party is friendly with them and the fact that my party's tried to save Dermot, they are going to be willing to help. They will also be willing to transfer fragments to those members of my party that don't have one. There's a couple reasons I'm doing this. Number one is I feel like it's a good story, but number two is I want to speed things up a little bit and don't want my party continually navigating the Netherdeep because I've got a player moving and I want to finish this thing before they do. They're going to be willing to part with some of those. They've also been exploring the Netherdeep and have found some as well. Then from there, my party can head in straight to the Heart of Despair, which we talked about already. Secrets and clues, we talked about this in our last video. I'm not going to go over this again, but I've got some things about the fragments, and then there's a whole bunch of the Apotheon lore. We're checking these off as they are revealed. NPCs, really just Alyxian and the Crimson Company with the rivals here. Monster stat blocks, I'm not going to go over this again either. We went over in our last video, but it's all the monsters and creatures that the party can face inside the Netherdeep. And then treasure, again, these are the same things we've talked about as my party has been in the Netherdeep. I'm just marking these off as they find them. And that's it. I'm really excited to see where my party goes from here. Thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate it. And huge shout out to all my patrons. We'll catch you in the next one.